Alright, this was a battle between the two best offenses in the league, but it was really the defense that stood out because both sides were consistent with their game plans, so that just required the stars to create a lot of the times, and it made for a hell of a game. For the Nugs, they were loading up on Durant or Albie whenever one of them had the rock in their spots, either up top or on the wing, and every time Durant was in a screening action, they just had their big show, so he was basically seeing 2 to 3 bodies the entire night. Those schemes were just forcing him off the rock, so he couldn't ever get into a rhythm, because if he wanted to get his, he had to take a tough shot, and that just led to him having a rough shooting night. But at least he was opening up the backside advantage for the others, because he was hitting his bigs on the short to either get theirs, or get a swing, or he'd just make the pass himself, and I thought he generated good looks throughout, especially for the weak corner. As I've said at the beginning of the year, it's going to be on the others to consistently make those shots, because those are the type of looks opponents are willing to give up against them, so it's just a matter of being shot ready, and they showed they're capable of knocking them down. But the second half was better than the first half, because the first quarter was rough, and Reed Sheppard in the second quarter was the only reason the team even got back into the game. Off the rock, he was by far their most consistent shooter on the spot up, and he was able to get into a rhythm on the rock, because for some reason, opponents are still having their bigs drop in his SNRs, so he's just exploiting that space to get his. It's obvious he's coming off every screen with the mindset to shoot first and pass second, so I'm surprised to see teams haven't figured that out, and at least Yoke did, because he was showing respect with his shows, but it was just a little too late once Reed got going. The only player opponents should be dropping against is Amen, and that was working until the fourth started, because his misses early didn't deter him from continuing to get downhill, so between him, Reed, and even Bari continuing to shoot from deep despite all of his breaks early, they made a couple runs that could have led to him taking control of the game. But the most they got up was 5 early in the fourth, because they had a cold stretch right after that led to the Nugs taking it back, and they never relinquished it for the rest of the quarter. By the time the Rockets made shots in the last 30 seconds, they were going against the clock at that point, and in these playoff type of games, the margins are very small, so it's almost always going to come down to makes or misses. But that's usually when the Nugs thrive, because they've been in the highest pressure situations, and per usual, a lot of that is always going to stem from Maul and Yoke, so those two were responsible for controlling the majority of their offense. It was obvious Maul was ready out the gates, because when the lights are bright, he always shows up, and in the first half, the rock was mainly in his hands, especially with the second unit. As expected, the Rockets were having Adams show in his screening actions to force the rock out of his hands, so he just had to make the right pass, and anytime they got a stop, him and Yoke were always finding the others in the open floor for runouts, because both of them were pushing the rock, or Yoke was just making his patented throw-aheads. It really took until the second half before they made a concerted effort to start getting Yoke more touches, and they did that by running middle pins for him, or just having him post more, because the Rockets were tilting and firing on those, so he was able to draw a double for kickouts. Between him having the rock in his spots, and Maul handling it in their two-man game, both of them basically generated everything when the game slowed down, but it still required the others to make their shots, so as great as the two were, the others were just as crucial. Tim Hardaway was always shot ready, Valanciunas was always ready for drop-offs, Bruce Brown was always running the floor, so was P. Watt, and Spencer Jones and Cam Johnson arguably hit the biggest shots of the night, because Spencer's was right after the Rockets' big run early in the fourth, then Cam's was what gave them back the lead down the wire. This win showed exactly why they're a well-oiled machine, because they consistently bring in players that are ready to play off Maul and Yoke, so as long as they continue keeping the right personnel around their core, they'll always be a contender, and it's going to take more of these type of games before the Rockets reach this level. Just watch the tape.